Welcome back, everyone, to CrimePod Castle Mystery Series. This is episode 15, and we're diving deep into a case today that really makes you wonder what happens when trying to get justice makes you a target. We're going all the way to Gaya, Bihar, India, back in 2001. So picture this, a place where people with power, those in politics and business, could just silence anyone who disagreed with them like that. And right at the center of this story is a young student activist, Rajkumar Rai. And he disappeared. Vanished.
Yeah, it's a story that really grabs you, isn't it? And Rajkumar, he wasn't just any student. This guy was known for being really passionate about activism. He was always speaking out against all the corrupt stuff that was going on, standing up to criminals. You could say he was a voice for the people who didn't have one, especially in a community where the powerful people, they just did whatever they wanted and got away with it.
Yeah, got away with it. And you said impunity earlier. For those listening who might not know what that means, it basically means doing bad things and not getting punished for it.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone admired Rajkumar for being so brave, but do you think the people he was exposing, the people whose bad deeds he was bringing to light, do you think they were afraid of him?
Oh, absolutely. They were definitely afraid. And that fear, that possibility of them wanting to get back at him, that's a really important part of trying to understand what happened to him.
Okay, so let's take it back to 2001, that night when everything changed. What do we actually know about what Rajkumar was doing right before he disappeared?
Well, the last time anyone saw him, he was leaving his college campus. People who saw him that day said he seemed really tense, almost like he knew something bad was about to happen. He even mentioned to a friend that he had this bad feeling about something. And then later that night, some people reported seeing him being taken away by a bunch of armed men.
No, wait, hold on. Taken away by armed men, that's not just disappearing. That sounds a lot more dangerous.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The police, you see, they investigated, or I should say they kind of investigated. They said they didn't find anything, no real leads, no evidence to go on. But you can't help but wonder, could those powerful people, the ones we were talking about, could they have had something to do with the investigation not really going anywhere?
That's the big question in this whole case, isn't it? Was there a reason why the investigation just stopped? Like, was someone trying to hide the truth on purpose?
It's a scary thought, right? But it's not impossible when you think about how much power some people had in Gaya back then. I mean, if you went against them, there could be serious consequences.
So you're saying Gaya was a place where people were too scared to speak up? A place where if you said something against corruption, you could end up disappearing?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. In this case, it's not just about what happened to Rajkumar. It makes you think about the dangers that anyone faces when they try to challenge people who have all the power. What happens when you try to get justice? But it means exposing the bad things that powerful people are doing. And the thing is, it's been over 20 years, and Rajkumar's family, they still don't know what happened to him.
No answers, no closure, more than 2 decades, and still nothing.
Can you imagine not knowing what happened to someone you love? All that wondering, all those unanswered questions.
It's a wound that never heals, right? And it's even worse knowing that the people responsible might never face justice for what they did.
That's what's really disturbing about this case. It shows how injustice can just go unpunished, especially when the people involved are powerful and influential.
It makes you question if we really have a fair system at all. I mean, if someone can vanish like that, and those in power can stop anyone from finding out the truth, what does that say about our laws?
It really makes you worry about the whole system. If justice only applies to certain people, if the powerful can use the system to get away with anything, then nobody's going to trust it anymore. And that's dangerous for everyone.
And everyone's afraid, right? If people believe that speaking up against injustice could lead to them disappearing, they're going to stay silent.
Absolutely. It's like a chilling effect, where people are too scared to challenge those in power, even when they see something wrong happening. And when everyone's silent, that's when corruption gets worse.
So how do we change this? How do we make sure that justice wins, even when powerful people are involved?
Well, there's no easy answer. We need strong institutions that can investigate these things without being influenced by anyone. We need a fair judicial system that punishes those who are guilty, no matter who they are or who they know.
But we also need to change how people think, don't we? We need to encourage people to speak truth to power and protect those who do. We need to support whistleblowers instead of silencing them.
I totally agree. It has to be a team effort. We all have to work together to hold those in power accountable and build a society where justice is a right for everyone, not just a privilege for a few.
Rajkumar's story is tragic, but it can be a wake-up call. It shows us how important it is to fight for change, to demand more transparency, and to make sure that people are held responsible for their actions.
His case should remind us that we can't just sit back and watch. We have to stay alert and keep fighting for a world where those in power can't abuse their position.
Because if we let those in power do whatever they want, if we ignore cases like Rajkumar's, then we're basically saying that it's okay for injustice to happen.
We have to speak up, demand answers, and make sure Rajkumar's story doesn't end in silence. It has to lead to action and change.
So let's look deeper into the theories about what happened to Rajkumar. Let's explore those scenarios and what they mean.
We mentioned earlier that Rajkumar's activism might have made some criminal groups angry. What if his investigations had actually uncovered a powerful criminal network in Gaya, a network that had connections to influential people in the community?
If that's true, then getting rid of Rajkumar would have been their only way to protect their business and keep their power.
Exactly, and it would explain why the investigation went nowhere. Maybe those involved had the power and the motive to manipulate the system and make sure the truth stayed buried.
It's a scary thought, but it makes sense considering what Gaya was like back then. Remember, the lines between criminals and those in power were often blurred.
And don't forget about the political side of things. What if Rajkumar found evidence of corruption within the government itself?
Now we're talking about a whole different level of danger. If he discovers something that could ruin the careers or even put powerful politicians behind bars, they would have a huge reason to silence him.
And they would have all the tools to do it. Think about the resources and influence they had, how easily they could manipulate the investigation.
It's like a movie, a political thriller, where the stakes are incredibly high and finding the truth is incredibly dangerous.
But the consequences are real. If Rajkumar was silenced to protect those in power, it sets a terrifying example.
It says that anyone who tries to expose corruption or challenge the way things are could disappear too.
And that fear can paralyze a whole community. People become afraid to speak up against injustice even when they see it happening right in front of them.
It's a vicious cycle. Corruption creates fear, and fear lets corruption grow stronger.
It's a complicated web of power where influential people can twist the system to benefit themselves while leaving the vulnerable and voiceless at their mercy.
And it seems that in Rajkumar's case, his pursuit of justice, his bravery in speaking truth to power, made him a target.
His story is a stark reminder of the dangers involved in challenging those in power, but it also shows us how important it is to keep fighting for justice, even when it feels impossible.
If we let fear silence us, if we accept injustice as the norm, then we're giving up our right to a fair and equal society.
Rajkumar's legacy should inspire others to speak out, to demand accountability, and to never stop seeking the truth.
Even when we face obstacles, even when those in power try to hide the truth, we have to keep fighting for justice.
Because when we stay silent, we empower the corrupt, we allow them to go unpunished, and we fail to create a world where everyone has equal access to justice.
Rajkumar's story, as tragic as it is, can be a force for change. It shows us that we need to make changes, to demand transparency, and to build a society that values and protects those who speak truth to power.
His disappearance should always remind us to stay vigilant, to hold those in power accountable, and to never let fear silence our voices.
The fight for justice can be dangerous, but it's a fight we can't give up on if we want to create a world where everyone can live with dignity and freedom.
Rajkumar's legacy should be one of courage, resilience, and an unyielding commitment to fighting for what's right, no matter the cost.
His story reminds us that justice isn't just handed out. It's something we have to fight for tirelessly and without compromise.
And it's a fight we have to fight together. We have to come together to demand accountability, to challenge those in power, and to create a society where justice always wins.
Because in the end, it's our responsibility to make sure that cases like Rajkumar's aren't forgotten, that those responsible are held accountable, and that the pursuit of truth and justice never ends. You know, it's hard not to feel overwhelmed by these kinds of stories. It's like a reminder that there are people out there who will do anything to hold on to their power, and they'll silence anyone who gets in their way.
It's true, these stories can really get to you, but we can't forget that we're not helpless.
Right, but what can we actually do? I mean, as individuals, when we're talking about corruption on this scale, does anything we do even matter?
Well, we can start by not staying silent. We can talk about these stories, make sure people know what's happening, and keep pushing the authorities to investigate and hold those responsible accountable.
So instead of letting these stories get us down, we could use them to make a change.
Right.
We can speak up, demand more transparency and accountability from those in power.
Exactly, and we can support those organizations out there that are fighting corruption and protecting human rights defenders. They're doing the hard work every day to expose injustice and push for real change.
That's a good point. Sometimes it feels like these problems are just too big for any one person to handle. But by supporting those groups, we can be part of something bigger that can actually make a difference.
And don't forget about our own communities. Change starts small. We can hold our local leaders accountable and demand a more just and fair society right here where we live.
That's a really powerful thought. It's easy to get lost in the enormity of it all, but even the little things we do can have an impact.
Absolutely. Every voice counts. Every act of courage, every time someone demands accountability, it all adds up to a world where justice can win.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Rajkumar's story, let's not just focus on the sadness. Let's turn those feelings into action.
Let's keep his memory alive by working towards a world where speaking truth to power doesn't get you killed, but instead creates real positive change.
And to everyone listening, we encourage you to find out more about this case. Learn more about Rajkumar, his activism, and all the people who are still fighting for the truth about what happened to him.
There's so much information out there, online, articles, documentaries, groups dedicated to getting justice for Rajkumar. Take some time to look into it and see how you can be a part of it.
And ask yourself, what can I do to make a difference in cases like this? How can I help create a world where people can speak truth to power without paying such a terrible price?
Because in the end, it's up to all of us to make sure that stories like Rajkumar's aren't forgotten, that the people responsible are held accountable, and that the search for truth and justice never ends.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Rajkumar Rai's story. We hope this has made you curious, sparked your passion for justice, and maybe even inspired you to take action.
It's been great exploring this important and complicated case with you.
And as always, keep the conversation going. Let us know your thoughts, questions, anything you want to share about this case on social media.
We love hearing from you, and we really appreciate you being part of the Deep Dive community.
And don't forget to follow and subscribe to our podcast for more deep dives into these captivating stories. We'll be back soon with another episode.
Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep searching for the truth.
Goodbye for now, and thanks for listening.